In this week's social studies assignment, we'll be looking at a graph about the U.S. acres burned by wildfires between 1972 and 2012. This chart is based on the story in your Scholastic articles on page 6. So if you like some context, you can go back and read that short, fun article. So all our questions here on the right-hand side are going to be based on this graph right here. Now, this is a line graph. It shows change over time. We can see the time on the bottom, the x-axis. And we see it's labeled year, and it goes from 1972 to 2012. What it's measuring is acres on the left-hand side. This is the y-axis here. And it's measuring acres in millions. So instead of writing 10,000, 000, it's just going to put the 10 there, and you need to understand that that's not 10 acres, that's 10 million acres. So for example, if I come over here and I want to see how many acres were burned in 1992, I simply go up to that dot and I see that this corresponds with this number here. That does not mean that in 1992 only 2 acres were burned by wildfires. It means that 2 million acres were burned by wildfires in 1992. Now you'll notice that some of these dots are not on lines, and that's where we have to use our inferences and read between the lines. So let's go to 1972, and we see that this is right here. Now we can tell that in between 2 and 4, this middle line here is going to be 3. That's the number that's right between there. So now we can narrow it down and say, okay, in 1972, between 2 and 3 million acres were burned. But if I want to get even more specific, I can look and say, okay, well, is this dot closer to the 3 or closer to the 2? Well, it's obviously closer to the 3. So I could say that almost 3 million acres burned in 1972. And if I needed to get it down even further than that, I could go into decimals and say maybe it's going to be over half, so maybe 2.75 million acres burned in 1972. Okay? So when you look at these graphs, it doesn't give you every single number. If a dot lands in between 2 lines, you have to think about which line it's closest to and what number that corresponds with, and take sometimes a best guess and say, like in 1977, we could say, well, this line is really close to 3 on here, and I know that's 3 because that 3 is the number between 2 and 4. So if that's really close to 3, then I could say in 1977, a little bit more than 3 million acres burned. As you answer these questions, you need to refer continually back to the chart and make sure that you're carefully understanding what it's trying to say. Again, the x-axis shows time in years. The y-axis here is going to show you the number of acres burned by wildfire in millions. So after you watch this video, you are ready to answer your questions. Good luck!